UFOs are real, burgeoning, and not going away. I am your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. Welcome to another episode of UFO Update. This one's amazing, and I just love this because people come out of the woodwork, and that's all I'll leave you with. So first, a word from our sponsor, then we'll get into it. Folks, have you taken a good look at the banks lately? On the surface, everything seems fine, but there seems to be a whole lot more going on underneath. It's like looking under the hood of a car and finding a mess of broken wires and parts. The parts are loans for homes, cars, and those credit cards we all use. Folks, they're hitting record highs. It's kind of scary when you think about it. Why risk your money for a tiny 5% return when things are so shaky? This is where Noble Gold Investments can help. They're like that friend who knows all about keeping money safe. They suggest gold and silver, oldies but goodies in the financial world. Plus, they've got a sweet deal, a free quarter-ounce gold standard coin this month if you qualify. Pretty good stuff, right? If you're curious, just give them a call at 877-646-5347. It's just a chat, no pressure. They'll help you figure out if gold and silver are right for you. Or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Once again, the number 877-646-5347. Folks, we've invested in Noble Gold, and quite frankly, I'm glad we did. So when I'm at conferences, people shoot me emails and people come out of the woodwork, not all the time, but many times. And it's amazing because there's this, they trust me. And that's a great honor. I want to say that first off. They trust me with their story. And in some cases, in many cases, I'm the first person that they've ever told it to, which for me is a great honor. And I'm not just saying that lightly. It really is. So Richard shows up. He gives me a few emails. He comes to the church at Texas. And I want to thank Pastor Dan and all those of you who came out for that. And he has a story about his grandmother and about Roswell. And you'll find this really interesting. Here's the interview. And tell us about your grandmother.
Yes, well, I'm from Roswell, New Mexico. My grandmother also lived in Roswell all of her life. She was employed as a civilian at Roswell Army Airfield. First civilian employed there in 1941. And she stayed there until 1967 when they closed the gates at Walker Air Force Base. And she worked in the base communications office underneath the communications officer. And she worked for a short time as I don't know if it's short or not, but she worked as the cryptographic assistant for the cryptographic officer. And she passed away in 1998. And I didn't know anything about what was going on in Roswell. I was there from 1954 to 1963, and nobody ever talked about Roswell, about the incident. None of the stuff was ever mentioned or talked about. So I had no clue. I moved away from Roswell, and then in about 1997 at a Chuck Missler conference in Roswell, talking about UFOs and stuff. This is where I learned most of what I know about it. And it piqued my curiosity, and my grandmother died the next year, and she was sick, so I went over there and we took her in the car to take a little tour of Walker Air Force Base. And she showed us, pointed out things that used to be the commissary, used to be this, used to be that. Made our way around to the flight line, which you couldn't get past because there was a fence there. But I jokingly, because I wasn't too sure about all this stuff, and I jokingly asked her, I said, "Okay, Grandma, where did they bring the bodies?" Expecting some sort of a giggle and laugh or whatever. Very seriously, she pointed to this hangar building on the other side of the fence and said, "Right there is where they took them."
Was that Hangar 84?
Hangar 84. She did not refer to it as 84, but she pointed to it, and it has to be it. Because she pointed directly at it and said, "That building right there, that hangar right there." And I'm waiting for her to go, "Ha ha," but she didn't. And I said, "Are you serious?" And she said, "Yeah, they took them there, but they wouldn't let us go over and see them." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I wished I had had more presence of mind to interrogate her a little more, but I didn't. I was sort of kind of stunned. But she never mentioned any of this stuff to me as growing up. And she used to take me to church in Roswell every Sunday. She went every Sunday. She taught Sunday school for 40-something years. And she's really responsible for me becoming a Christian, because at that early age, she dragged me there. And
so circling back to Roswell, did she talk about the object that was taken, the craft that crashed?
She didn't. She didn't mention
But she talked about the bodies.
She talked, because that's what I said. That's what I told her, or asked her. I said, where did they take the bodies?
Okay.
And she said, that building right there. And
did she elaborate? Did you ask what they looked like?
No, that's why I wished I would have.
Right,
because
okay.
Later I thought, man.
But she said it without any hesitation.
Without any hesitation. And my grandma was a no-nonsense person. Right. Taught Sunday school for 40 years. Yeah.
So were you in the car when this happened?
We were in the car.
And you were driving by what is now Hangar, what was then Hangar 84.
Exactly,
yes. We were just there.
Front right seat. My wife was in the back. She can verify. And I was driving. And that's when I made my way around over there. Was my intention in the first place. And
Did she ever say anything else about the Roswell incident?
She never. Well, no, she didn't. I will mention something. I don't know if, back home, at her place, she said, when I was a little girl, we used to have a front porch swing, and it was a real hot day, and I was laying kind of dozing in and out of a nap one day, and I was awoken by this buzzing sound. And I looked at her, and she said I think she said it was an orange or yellowish or whatever, but it was about 10 feet from her off the porch and spinning. This color thing just spinning about twice the size of a football, and with this buzzing noise. And then she was startled, and she said it vanished. What that has to do with anything, I don't know. It's like bizarre. But
how old was she at 1947? She was born in 1908.
1906.
So she's okay.
And so
do the math.
41?
Yeah.
41 years old. She died when she was 90.
Did she ever talk about the nurses that were there? Did she say anything else about the event?
No, she didn't, and that's what puzzles me.
When she said about the bodies, do you remember exactly what she said? Can you tell us exactly? So I want you to reenact that.
Yeah.
Just follow me for a second. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath and relax. Just take a deep breath and relax. You're in the car. You're with your grandma. And I want you to ask your grandmother right now the same question that you would have asked years ago.
Quite honestly, the only thing that I can remember is, and I've talked about it with my wife, she says the same thing. I laughed and said, okay, Grandma, where did they bring the body? Where did they take the bodies? And she said, with her finger, she pointed out the window and said, that building right there. And I said, really? You're not kidding. She said, no, but they wouldn't let us go over and see them. Now, my grandmother being career Air Force and whatnot, she was probably listening to what they told her. You're not going to talk about this. Yes, sir. And she never did until that day. And then after that, never mentioned it again.
So did they tell her not to talk about it?
Yes, my dad told me later. Now, she didn't tell me that, but my dad did.
Right.
And my dad was 14 years old at the time.
And what did he say?
He's never talked about any of this stuff either. I don't know if they threatened.
But he told you that your grandmother was told never to talk about it.
He told me that they threatened your grandma.
Say that again?
My dad told me that they threatened your grandmother if she ever spoke about this.
And when she did speak about it, she passed away about a year later.
She passed away a year later.
So she was already sick, I'm assuming.
She probably already knew she was going to go,
So this is, is it safe to say this is like a deathbed confession?
Yeah, that's the feeling I got.
Okay.
She was faithful all those years, I guess, because I spent so much time with her. I spent the night with her on weekends and go to church, and we did all kinds of things, and she never, no clue as to what.
Until the very end.
Until the very end. And even when I was in the military, I had a top secret clearance. I worked in communications. I was in Korea. I had a top secret clearance with a special intelligence access in case I needed it. But she never mentioned anything about it until that year before she died.
Anything else?
I will mention, I don't know how much it relates to, but her brother, we never interacted. I never knew I had an uncle like that. And come to find out, and I've got a newspaper article about him, he was involved in some top secret stuff for the Army and the government in the Pacific during and after Korean War. He was, according to the article, was a greeter for the government, for the King of Saudi Arabia. He received an award from the National Security Agency, the second highest award that they give for whatever, because I have the picture, and on the back it says that, written in his wife's hand. And he wanted me to go to West Point before I even knew who he was. But she didn't want me to interact with him because as my dad said, he was an atheist. And I have a 8x10 glossy of him shaking the hand of the deputy director of the National Security Agency somewhere in the late 50s, early 60s, with a Masonic handshake. When I saw that, after I learned about Freemasonry and some things, I looked it up. I Googled it, and sure enough, it's a high-level Freemason greeting. And it's right there on the picture. It's obvious, you know.
I'd like to see that too.
You don't shake somebody's hand with two fingers like this and the thumb up. I mean, so yeah, it was, and I got chills when I saw that, and I said, "Thank you, grandmother," because I met him one time in San Antonio when he was retired, and I went in my uniform, and I was in the infantry at that time. And he said, "What do you do up there at Fort Hood?" And I said, "Well, I'm in the infantry." And he shook his head and he said, "That won't do. You got to get into the officer corps." And I said, "Okay." But he was obviously a very distinguished man. His wife drove him around, and he, chauffeured him around and everything. And he showed me pictures of Civil War people. Said, "This is your great this and great that." And he had bottles of wine from France that he said, "That one's $500 and that one's," he was a very distinguished man. But probably had I hooked up with him in the early years, who knows where I would have ended up. My grandmother didn't want me, so I give her thanks for that. Because I really feel that she's responsible for me eventually becoming a Christian and accepting Jesus Christ as my Savior.
Thank you. We'll end it right there.
Yes,
perfect.
Sir.
So what I love about this is he's in the car. Just to recap, he's in the car, he's driving, grandmom's right next to him, and he's right by Hangar 84, which, by the way, we got into Hangar 84. It's in number 2, Roswell Revisited, the debris field. We got into that, and that whole scenario, how we got in and how I pressed the envelope a little bit that got us in, and I'm standing in Hangar 84. It's exactly the way it was in 1947, except there's a very large plane in there. What's amazing about this is Richard's grandmother said, without any hesitation, that's where the bodies were. Just like that. That's where the bodies were. Folks, how many people do we need to have come on the record? How many people need to come on the record before we realize that there was a deliberate cover-up? That it wasn't a weather balloon, it wasn't some secret Nazi craft, it was what Jesse Marcel Sr. said it was, Marcel, his son, Jr., Jesse Marcel Jr. said it was, and the other people that we've talked to. It's there. It was there. Everything was moved up to right, Pat. Wow. Thanks, Richard, for coming on the record. What an amazing story. I will be at the Prophecy Watchers Conference at the end of February. Hope to see you there. I'll be talking about Roswell, both films, in depth. I'll also be more than likely be doing an updated version of Days of Chaos. That book really has a lot of prophetic insights, not because of me, but because of what the Word of God tells us. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget, further evidence is also available. Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest. Folks, there's so many resources You know, I wish I could give them all away for free, and we've done that in the past. And still people don't get them, even if they're for free. Like when the first 2 UFO films were out, they were free on YouTube. You'd think we'd have 1 million hits? No. One of them, I think, was 250. The other one was like 180,000. And I just went, well, this is stupid. And we just took it all down. Because even if it's free, people won't watch. This information is vital. It's here. LAMarzulli.net, LAMarzulli.net. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with more on the whole UFO phenomenon.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Late this afternoon, a bulletin from New Mexico suggested that the widely publicized mystery of the flying saucers may soon be solved. Army Air Force officers reported that one of the strange discs had been found and inspected sometime last week. Our correspondents in Los Angeles and Chicago have been in contact with Army officials endeavoring to obtain all possible late information. Joe Wilson reports to us now from Chicago.
The Army may be getting to the bottom of all this talk about the so-called flying saucer. As a matter of fact, the 509th Atomic Bomb Group headquarters at Roswell, New Mexico, reports that it has received one of the discs which landed on a ranch outside Roswell. The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico, and the rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazell was the man who discovered the saucer. Colonel William Blanchard of the Roswell Air Base refuses to give details of what the flying disc looks like.